If you're like most language learners, your language learning process looks something like this. You start out with an extended period of study, only introducing speaking practice later when you've already developed an extensive vocabulary and grammar knowledge. Most people don't dream of spending their time studying a language. They imagine that sometime in the future they will be practicing it and will no longer have to study. How this will happen, though, is another matter, because not everyone is lucky enough to end up using the language for practical purposes. This model has two disadvantages. First of all, it's inefficient. With this ratio of study to practice, where there's much more study than practice, you inevitably develop a backlog of half-learned material. You have an information glut. You know much more than you're able to use in practice. The second shortcoming is that it's risky. Like I said, not everyone will have the good fortune to end up using their language for practical purposes. Why is luck part of language learning? Let's look at the supply and demand of language practice. Let's say you live in the city of Kiev, Ukraine, where there are roughly 1 million people who need English practice. Of these, perhaps 10% realize and are looking for realize this need and are looking for language practice. On the other hand, there are perhaps 1,000 native or near-native English speakers in the city. On average, each of them has perhaps 1 hour of time per day that they would be interested in spending communicating with people who are not natives or near-native speakers. If you do the math, that comes out to 36 seconds of English practice per day for those 100,000 Kiev residents who are actively looking for language practice. So, conversation practice, most of the time, is the limiting factor in language learning. There are far more people learning languages than will ever be able to use them actively in practice. Like many other things in life, we learn languages just in case we might need them someday. I'd like to show you a better way, a way that solves the problem of inefficiency and risk of never using your language skills in practice. So, because language practice supply is the limiting factor, we will start off by solving that problem first. So there are different types of quality conversation practice. There are types that require natives. That would be immersion, working with a tutor or a conversation coach. There are types of language practice that don't require natives, non-natives. That would be language clubs, for example, where people get together to have conversations in a foreign language, and individual learning partners. This would be someone you get together with who's also a non-native speaker of the language, and you simply converse in the language because you like to, or you like to develop your speaking skills. So once we introduce non-native forms of quality conversation practice, we broaden the pool of supply and we make it possible for people to get much more language practice than they normally would under the standard model. What I would like to propose through my books and my instruction is a model that looks something like this. After an initial period of mostly study, but also already starting to get speaking practice, we move into the second stage of language learning, which remains unchanged indefinitely as long as the language remains an important part of your life. Here we have large amounts of speaking practice and just a little bit of study that complements the speaking practice that you're getting. To find out exactly what to do in stage 1 and stage 2, you can read my book, Frictionless Foreign Language Mastery.